Assalamu alaikum fam, hope you're doing fantastic. So, let's continuing our reading of Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He is spoken about quite extensively. So let's dig in, see what he's all about. I've had a professor who was very into him, and a lot of people like him. Alright, so let's begin. We're in part 6. Then something happened that made every mouth dumb and every eye rigid. So already, right? Dumb meaning like not being able to function. Like it's not gonna happen. And eye rigid is like, it's really fixed. So he's disturbed the element. For meanwhile, the tightrope walker had begun his performance. He had stepped out of a small door and was walking over the rope, stretched between two towers, and suspended over the marketplace and the people. So you have a tightrope walker, which is a rope from one side to the other, and people are going to be nervous about that. They're really watching him. Because if he falls, he's done, right? But most of them had a rope to their waist that would catch them, right? But some, no doubt, they were a bit daredevils and went with no rope. When he had reached the exact middle of his course, the small door opened once more, and a fellow in motley clothes, looking like a jester, jumped out, and followed the first one with quick steps. So a jester is, he's that court clown, right? He's got that funny hat. "Forward, lame foot!" he shouted in awe-inspiring voice. "Forward, you lazy-boned smuggler, pale-face, or I shall tickle you with my heel! What are you doing here between towers? Tower is where you belong. You ought to be locked up. You block the way for one better than yourself." So now notice this is like a little bit of a tart point here, right? You block the way from someone better. A little bit of implication there. And with every word he came closer and closer. But when he was but one step behind, the dreadful thing happened which made every mouth dumb and every eye rigid. He uttered a devilish cry and jumped over the man who stood in his way. So he jumped over. Wow. This man, however, seeing his rival win, lost his head, and the rope tossed away his pole and plunged into the depth even faster. So he's really falling then. A whirlpool of arms and legs. The marketplace became as the sea when a tempest pierces it. The people rushed apart. Wow, so look at that. Instead of rushing together to try to save him, they rushed away. Scary. One another, especially at the place where the body must hit the ground. So, instead of rushing to save the guy and catch him, they moved out of the way so that when he goes splat, it's not going to get all on them, right? So Zarathustra, however, did not move, and it was right next to him that the body fell, badly maimed and disfigured, but not yet dead. So here, you're getting an insight to the characteristic trait of Zarathustra, right? He didn't move. He knew it was coming down, but he didn't move, right? He didn't run and hide. Very interesting. After a while, the shattered man recovered consciousness and saw Zarathustra kneeling beside him. Well, that must have been something, right? "What are you doing here?" he asked at last. "I have long known the devil would trip me. Now he will drag me to hell. Would you prevent him?" "By my honor, friend," answered Zarathustra, "all that of which you speak does not exist. There is no devil and no hell. Your soul will be dead even before your body. Fear nothing further." Wow. So, geez, you kind of get a little bit of Nietzsche's puns here. He really likes to insert these points in there. This contrast, though, if you think about it, between the person who just fell and is injured, he's kind of looking at Zarathustra like, "I knew the devil would trip me and drag me to hell," and Zarathustra, after seeing such a tragedy, is saying there isn't hell. So notice how the one who's injured believes in hell, and the one who witnessed it and didn't move and allowed it to happen in a way by not trying to help and wasn't deterred or rushing for aid is saying something opposite. Right? It's really interesting here. how you can contrast those two personalities in a specific moment. The man looked up suspiciously. "If you speak the truth," he said, "I lose nothing when I lose my life. I am not much more than a beast that has been taught to dance by blows and a few meager morsels." So taught to dance by blows, meaning he was hit. So when he says not much more than a beast that has been taught to dance by blows, this is quite sad, because you know that circus animals get beat. So he's the performer, right? So he's performing for the people. He's doing a little bit of, acrobatics, a little bit of gymnastics, a little bit of tightrope walking. So for him to degrade himself like that is quite sad, right? And then he says, "for a few meager morsels," meaning not even that much. Quite interesting. "By no means," said Zarathustra. "You have made danger your vocation. There is nothing contemptible in that. Now you perish of your vocation. For that I will bury you with my own hands." So notice this here. You have made danger your vocation, so your occupation, your job, and now you'll perish from it. So this is like, that saying, live by the sword, die by the sword. So this is a different way of that, but it still implies the same undertone of danger. Like, walk along the razor's edge and you're eventually going to get your heels sliced and fall down. So when he says he's going to bury him with his own hands, you can see the honor there. Notice though, Zarathustra didn't run to save him, to offer his hand to save him, but he will offer his hand to bury him. Something there for you, right? When Zarathustra had said this, the dying man answered no more, but he moved his hand as if he thought Zarathustra's hand in thanks. So he's like, "Thank you," or however he moved his hand, but there was a gesture there of thank you. So notice how he said, "Will you prevent the devil from dragging him?" Remember how he said that to Zarathustra? So he said, no, he wouldn't, but he'll help him bury. So you have these two examples here, right? Of not running to rescue him when he fell, not preventing the devil to take him away if he existed, he contended, and then now he's offering his hand in burial, and then the jester offers his hand in thanks. Lots of emphasis on hands here, right? It's like very interesting how he brings that in. Okay, so part 7. Meanwhile, the evening came, and the marketplace hid in darkness. Then the people scattered, for even curiosity and terror grow weary. Now that's an interesting statement. So curiosity growing weary and terror growing weary. Curiosity killed the cat, right? So you have a limit of like, you're curious, you're burnt out on that. Now terror growing weary, that's another one. The receiver or the giver, which one, right? But Zarathustra sat on the ground near the dead man, and he was lost in thought, forgetting the time. He sat, okay. So did you see that? He's sitting near the ground of the dead man, right? So now he's, sitting near him, whereas previously he was standing where he was injured. So standing while he is injured and alive, now sitting while he's dead, right? So he's not afraid to be next to a gory scene or a death scene. So you're getting a glimpse into how Nietzsche has put this character for us. At last night came, and a cold wind blew over the lonely one. Then Zarathustra rose and said to his heart, "Verily it is a beautiful catch of fish that Zarathustra has brought in today. Not a man has he caught, but a corpse." So this is an interesting phrase. People say, "Look what the cat dragged in. Look what the cat drug in." It's usually when somebody comes disheveled through your door, because cats sometimes bring you a dead bird, they kind of bring you a gift, and sometimes they leave it at your doorstep, right? So this is like a different way of phrasing it, saying instead of "look what the cat dragged in," it's "look at that beautiful catch of fish." It's interesting. Human existence is uncanny and still without meaning. Oh, jeez. I mean, ouch, you know? Like, okay, you can see what he's saying here. You can be like, it's uncanny, but it has no meaning. Because over here, he denied hell. So, if you get into this mindset, well, we, as Muslims, know, well, you're here to worship Allah, right? Whereas, someone in this mindset, even though this is a fictional story, you know, you might want to give a little bit of dawah to him. A gesture can become man's fatality. I will teach men the meaning of their existence, the overmen, the lightning out of the dark cloud of man, but I am still far from them, and my sense does not speak to their senses. So here, a jester can become man's fatality. Okay, so who is the jester? That tightrope walker, right? People were watching it, and the guy, you know, when he fell, didn't really do him a lot of good, right? So notice how he said the overman. So he mentions within the same framework a jester or an overman. Which one you want to be? You want to be the jester or you want to be the overman? And he's saying, previously, remember that the overman, it helps you overcome existence. You become, in this reality, into the overman, ideally, right? So he's contending that he's going to help that, and he even mentions the dark cloud of man. So lightning out of the dark cloud of man. So lightning is a bright light, right? It can start fires. It can change the landscape. It burns trees. It can strike a giant oak and no more shade for you, right? It can snipe you right out of the air. There's a lot of, you know, allegorical, metaphorical points on lightning. But when lightning comes out of a dark cloud, it's like you don't expect when lightning strikes. You hear thunder, thunder, snap, there it is, right? So he's contending he's sort of this sort of lightning out of the dark cloud, right? So life is, as he said, without meaning. So if you're without meaning, you have a dark, gloomy cloud over your consciousness, right? He's saying he's going to be the lightning, which wakes you up to become the overman. Do you see how he does these play with words? It's really quite interesting. And then he says, my senses does not speak to their senses. So when you sense lightning, when you sense thunder, how are your senses under a dark cloud? So notice this, right? What are the senses of the jester? What are the senses of the overman? These are things you can compare. And he's different. Obviously, he's saying senses. So when he saw the guy's body fall, he stood there. When he saw the guy's corpse, he sat there. His senses, his sensibilities, right, were not as affected. So when he contends he has a different sense, it means that in multiple senses, right? Multiple meanings. To men I am still the mean between the fool and the corpse. Exactly. So he's this sort of like middle ground here. Dark is the night. Dark are Zarathustra's ways. Come, cold, stiff companion. I shall carry you where I may bury you with my own hands. So, dark are Zarathustra's ways. So, wasn't it a bit dark how we saw how he had this very strong sensibility to not move by a mangled body or even a dead body, right? We think of ourselves, we can compare, like, how would we feel, right? Now, he contrasts this. So when he says, come my cold, stiff companion, the corpse is cold and stiff. But didn't Zarathustra come off as a little cold and stiff? When he said, you know, hell doesn't exist and life is uncanny and has no meaning, isn't that a bit cold? A bit dreary? So, it's quite interesting. And he ends it with, I'm going to bury you with my own hands. That's why he's keeping his words. Again, referencing this hand point here. So, lots of fun things to nerd out on. I hope you enjoyed. Nietzsche can give you much to philosophize upon. I'm pretty sure you'll cover lots of his works in your classes, so hopefully you can use this video as another angle for whatever it is you're writing or you just want to nerd out. Have a great day.